Every tournament, I make a tier list ranking every single side. This year is no different for this upcoming World Cup, except we have 48 teams, so we need to get a bit of a shift on. Let's start with the tiers. We have rock bottom, third place, round of 32. And then we move up and we got not terrible sides, good sides, dark horses, quarterfinals, favourites, where I'll give you probably the 4 semi-finalists in my opinion before the final champions. Let's start with the rock bottom. Now, this is probably the most offensive category, but teams like Qatar, in my opinion, Haiti, for example, probably don't have the greatest chance. We saw Qatar for the first time. This is Haiti's first time, at least my first time seeing Haiti. Teams like Paraguay, let's say Curacao. Curacao is an interesting example for me. I think they've got some good players. I think they just recently lost their head coach, but based on the fact they were a Dutch colony, I don't know, they might even still be a Dutch colony. They have a lot of Dutch exports, and guys like Tahith Chong, for example, is going to play for them, which I'm really excited to see, former Man United player. In terms of moving on, we have teams like Tunisia and Iran, teams that we've seen in the World Cup before but haven't really performed to those levels and likely are going to get grouped. On top of this, we have Cape Verde. The other interesting thing about Iran is whether or not they're able to play. I hope that they can. They've qualified. They deserve to take their place in this World Cup. Then we got teams like Cape Verde. I think we're going to see a lot of disparity between some of those top teams and some of those bottom teams. Just by virtue of the fact there's 16 extra teams, there's going to be new teams we've never seen before. But I think in the group stages, that's also going to lead to a lot of blowouts. Moving forward from there, we got Jordan and Iraq. I just don't know. Iraq on one hand, I just don't see very much ahead of them. Jordan, similar story. Uzbekistan is an interesting thing for me. I don't predict them to go very far, but I think that Uzbekistan have a bit of a chance based on the fact that they've got a really, really world-class player. Kusanov is probably Man City's second best, maybe even their best centre-back at the moment. And I think it's really interesting when these smaller sides have such an unbelievable player like Kusanov is, and to see what dynamic that presents itself. And then Panama, I think they're an okay side. I think they just got drawn into a very tough group with Croatia, Ghana, and England, and I just don't see them really with any chance, to be honest. Then potentially the hardest pick I had to make. South Africa technically will probably be 4th place. The problem with that group is it's really, really, really difficult to predict, in my opinion. I think with South Korea, South Africa, Mexico, and the Czech Republic, there are a lot of teams. I think almost every single team in that group could finish in all 4 of the positions, and I think it makes a tough environment. I would probably say that South Africa will fall in this category, however, we'll put them in 3rd place simply by the fact that they have a high ceiling. As a side note here, 3rd place are the teams that are not in the playoffs. So there are 8 teams that make the playoffs, the highest finishing 3rd place. Highest 8 finishing 3rd place teams, and out of those 4 teams will not go through. And so a lot of this is not going to depend on who the best 3rd place teams are, but how many points they can accrue. And 4 points is probably enough to take you to these knockout stages. And I think it's made difficult by having a tough group. We'll start with somebody like New Zealand. I just don't think that they quite have the pieces to get through. A similar story with Saudi Arabia. Algeria are a tough one. I think they're kind of a victim of being in a difficult group in terms of Argentina and Austria are going to take points. You maybe beat Jordan, but that's not going to be enough to take you through. And then a similar thing with Congo. I actually quite like Congo, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, for example, but I'm not sure they quite will get through there. In terms of playoffs and round of 32, this is going to be a mixture of some of those sides that finish in 3rd place, but also some of the sides that didn't finish in 3rd place, finish 2nd, for example, in their group, and don't quite qualify through to those kind of knockout stages, later knockout stages, because they have a tough draw. Mexico, similar story with South Africa. I think they're going to struggle in terms of being in such a difficult group. They're going to have a lot of battering taken from them, and I just don't think they'll progress any further based on the fact that they probably draw Mexico in the round of 32. Moving forward from then, we have somebody like Scotland. Again, a similar story where I just don't know how far they could go. To be honest, I think I might even lean that Scotland make it through a round. I think they're likely to draw the Czech Republic, but I don't know how much further they can go post that. They probably play England, and obviously bias aside, I do think England is good enough. Australia, I don't believe in that much. I just think they have a very, very easy group in terms of getting through in that 3rd place. But then they probably run into Germany. In terms of their group itself, it's got the US in it, They have Turkey and Paraguay. So I think they could be one of those candidates to make it through in terms of a third place win, getting into those playoffs, but not any further. The Ivory Coast, a similar story. I hope that Amad Diallo performs to his top level, but I don't think they're quite there yet. Ghana, I think, will be a third place team. They're going to struggle with England and Croatia in the group, but I think have a lot of talent. I really don't know where to sit. It depends on what Mohamed Kudus's availability is. They have somebody like Semenyo, for example, but they didn't qualify for AFCON, and I think that makes it a difficult equation. I'd move Canada in based on the fact that they have a more comfortable group, but I just don't see much firepower for them outside of Jonathan David and Alphonso Davies. But to be fair, Jonathan David hasn't even been very good this season. Then I would say Egypt. I think they're going to struggle with the fact that Salah is tailing off. Omar Mamouche has not had his best season. I think they'll do well, and I think they have a group that is set up well for them to finish in second place, but not much further. Moving forward, I would say Bosnia, a similar story, team that qualified through the playoffs. I think they're an okay side, nothing crazy, and I think that they kind of round of 32 will be a good place for them. And then perhaps the most surprising one out of all of them is Brazil. And now this is a weird one because Brazil could advance further. We don't know what it's going to be like under Carlo Ancelotti. I would have them losing to the Netherlands in the round of 32, and that's because they have a really difficult team in their group, and that's Morocco. I really like Morocco, and I really back Morocco. If Brazil can't make it through, they're probably potentially missing Esteval, potentially missing Neymar. I just don't think Brazil at the minute have those kind of talented players, and they're in a bit of a rebuilding phase where maybe in 4 years' time we could be looking and going, wow, they are elite once again. But I just don't think that is the case right now, and I think the Netherlands are really well built, especially defensively, to hold them off. That moves us up into this kind of not terrible category. I would say Japan is certainly in there, always playing kind of above their abilities potentially and the sum of their parts. I think they're a really, really solid side, a really strong side all round. Sweden is a weird one for me. I like Sweden a lot. Isak obviously is a big part. Whether or not he'll be firing by the time the World Cup comes, I think he should be. Victor Gyökeres has been excellent when playing in the national team. Not as good as when he's been playing. He's been playing better for the national team than he does for Arsenal, so I think that suits them. Ecuador are one of the most exciting teams for me in this World Cup. A team with William Pacho, Piero Hincapié, Moises Caicedo. However, I think they're very defensive, and I think that's going to hurt them later in the tournament. I think they're going to be a formidable team and a really tough team to face. You do not want to draw this team in the round of 16 or the round of 32 because I think they're going to give you a really hard time. Moving on, we have the Czech Republic. I think they're going to be a difficult team to break down and one of those members of a really difficult group, and we'll place South Korea in there with them too. Very solid sides. I don't know where they're going to finish, and I think I struggle to pick them any further because they're going to beat up on each other in Group A, and I think that's going to be a very, very close race. Forward, yes, a team like Senegal, a very, very solid team, a very good team for a long time. I think going to regress a little bit, but they did just win the AFCON, so you have to give them that token of respect. And I think they're going to be a solid side, but nothing too amazing. Much similar to Colombia, for example, I think are, again, just a good side. Nothing that's going to really jump off the page. I would put Austria in a similar bracket where they're just a very solid side, top to bottom. Nothing in that those teams kind of go, oh my goodness, they're going to be fantastic. But equally, you would respect them in these kind of knockout stages and would say they're going to be a very solid group. After that, I would say Uruguay are going to be an okay side. I think it really depends on what Darwin Núñez is doing. They've got Ronald Araujo, who needs to be playing at his best. Federico Valverde, an excellent player, one of the best midfielders and even right backs at time in the world. Darwin Núñez needs to be playing at top form for this Uruguay squad to make a deep run. And I just don't know if I can really count on that. Before finally, the other host is going to go out in probably the round of 16. I could definitely see them getting a win in that first round. I think it shapes up quite nicely for them in terms of who they have to play. They have to play Egypt, most likely in the second round, or in that round of 32 rather, which leads them through. But then they're going to run into Argentina, most likely in the round of 16. And I would say that would be the end of their tournament pretty quickly. Then teams that I think are very good sides, just nothing a level above. And I think they have the opportunity to go to the quarterfinals potentially and make a deeper run. But I'm not sure, and I wouldn't hang my hat on it. And I think Croatia is one of those sides. Luka Modric has been announced. Has picked up an injury in his cheekbones. He should be back for the World Cup, but he's not going to be 100%. And they're a team in kind of transition. They're transitioning from the amazing side in 2018, that is starting to fade away a little bit because their core is starting to age and move on. Guys like Perisic, for example. You think of the last generation with Mandzukic and Modric, obviously, who's still playing, Perisic, Rakitic. They just had so many amazing players, but they have an amazing group coming through too. You think of a guy like Josko Vardiol, who is really starting to take things to the next level, and I think it's going to be interesting for Croatia. Germany, I think, are a side going through transition, and I just don't think have quite the pieces. A similar thing to Croatia in a sense that a lot of their best players are now gone. Think of guys who are retiring in the last couple of years, guys like Toni Kroos, Manuel Neuer, and I'm interested to see how they will adapt, and I just don't see them making a super deep run because of that. And then a similar thing with Switzerland. I think a team that always goes under the radar at tournaments is not particularly on my mind, and then suddenly you look up and they're in the round of 16, the quarterfinals, especially in the Euros, always seeming to be around and in those interesting positions. Now we get to the business end of this tournament and some teams that I'm really excited to looking forward to seeing. First of all, Morocco. We just saw them in the finals of the AFCON, kind of won it, didn't really win it. It was a little bit of a weird situation, but even last time out rather, in the semi-finals of the World Cup, a really fantastic team that's getting better. It's no longer the Ashraf Hakimi show. Brahim Diaz is getting better, a super exciting young talent, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do in this World Cup. Now, by far the most exciting team, theoretically, that we don't know very much about is going to be Norway. Led by Erling Haaland, it's the first time he's made it to a World Cup. Guys like Ødegaard behind him, and then they've got a talented set of players behind them, which is going to propel Norway to a really exciting fate, potentially. Also, add on to that the run of Bodo Glimt in the Champions League this season, and I think it makes them a very, very exciting and a very difficult proposition, one that's going to raise hell. And what a group they're in terms of France, Senegal, and Norway. That is going to be a really, really exciting group to watch. And then finally, Turkey, always seeming to be around, and I think they're better than any other year that they've been characterized as a dark horse. You think of some of the guys of the past. Hakan Çalhanoğlu is still around and he's still doing sensational things, but even more to the point, they have two really, really exhilarating youngsters. Two of probably the best youngsters in the world right now in terms of Arda Güler and Kenan Yildiz. Two unbelievable players, two unbelievable attacking talents, and I think that they could potentially put the pieces together to make a bit of a run. They've got a very high ceiling. Whether or not they'll be able to act on that and actually defend enough to make a deeper run is going to be up for debate. Then a team I mentioned briefly is the Netherlands. I really like their structure. Virgil van Dijk, obviously, still there. Mark Verbruggen is looking really, really good at the moment for Brighton. Every time I see him play, he seems very, very on it. Then you've got somebody like Matthijs de Ligt. If he's healthy, he is fantastic. And that is one of the most formidable centre-back partnerships that you can get. Really, really exciting. They've got guys like Jeremy Frimpong coming forward. There's so much talent in different places for this Dutch team. They don't quite have it spread across as much as some of these other teams that we're going to mention later, but a really exciting proposition to watch and a really, really good and very sound team. Now, speaking of one of the best position groups, if the Netherlands potentially have the best centre-back partnership, this team has the best midfield partnership. Bruno Fernandes, Vitinha, and João Neves. An absolutely stunning midfield three. One of the most informed midfield three, not to add to the fact they are just the most talented midfield three. Really, really dangerous. I hope that they can make a deep run for the sake of Cristiano Ronaldo. They're probably going to run into Argentina in the quarterfinals, and I would say that would probably end their run. And then finally, Belgium, an interesting proposition yet again, kind of past the years of the golden age, but still very, very talented. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with them, how they develop, whether they'll crash and burn because they're going to be missing some of those players in their top form, or if they're still going to be around and still going to be in the conversation, which is why I have them in the quarterfinals. Whether or not Thibaut Courtois will be back, it'll be an interesting kind of dynamic in terms of his health for this World Cup, which leaves us with 4 teams: Argentina, England, France, and Spain. And that's actually the order in which the semi-finals are played: Argentina, England, and then France, Spain. We'll start with Argentina, England. And I think this is going to be a really interesting one. Argentina, obviously the defending champions. I don't think they're as good as they were 4 years ago, which is easy to say given the fact that they won 4 years ago. So it's obvious that, it's easier to regress and not win again. And I think this England team is starting to peak at the right time. This doesn't mean that they're my champion at the minute, by the way. I'm going to pick the other semi-final too. But I think they're starting to build in the sense that Jude Bellingham doesn't get the limelight he deserves. And England as a team often gets underrated as a collective and overrated as the sum of its parts. Each player gets overrated individually, but then we forget about somebody like Jude Bellingham, who went away to Real Madrid, isn't in the limelight as much as he is, and people forget how good he is. He is one of the best, if not the best, attacking midfielder or midfielder in the world at times. Add to that the fact that Harry Kane is playing at a Ballon d'Or level this year, and you've got to take into account that they are going to be a big force in the World Cup. Last time out in the Euros, it was like, no way they'll even make it that far, and yet again they made another final. It's been semi-final, quarter-final at the World Cups, both finals of the Euros, and I think they're primed to make a deep run and potentially make it to the World Cup final. And finally, France-Spain, which I'll pick France to go through because based on the fact that Spain are missing some pieces, I think Nico Williams has been nowhere near his best this season. He's really, really struggled at that left wing at Atletico Bilbao. Lamine Yamal is suffering a hamstring injury, and if he comes back, which he will, I'm sure he will play in this World Cup, I don't think he's going to be 100%. I think he's going to force his way back and maybe only be at 60, 70%. And when you do add into the equation that Spain are lacking a striker already in Oyarzabal, he's not the perfect number 9. I think not having those electrifying two wingers on either side, add to the fact, Martin Zubimendi isn't playing as well, I think they're going to struggle. However, you've got to look at some of the other unbelievable players they have. Think of their goalkeeping situation. Unai Simon has been the goalkeeper for a long time, and they've got two of some of the best goalkeepers in the world in terms of Joan Garcia and David Raya. So you can't really count them out, but France just have a litany of talent. You think about their starting three. Well, it's really hard to predict because you've got Desiree Doué, Michael Olise, Ousmane Dembele, Kylian Mbappe. You can just keep going and keep naming players. Players like Ryan Cherki are playing unbelievably well. So much talent spread across this France team, and I think they're going to be a big issue, which is why they are going to be my champions this time around. I think they're going to be really, really impressive, and I think it's easy to convince yourself that they are not as good and that they're overhyped, but I just don't think that's the case. I think they are utterly phenomenal, and I think they are going to be the team that will win this World Cup. Let me know what you think of my predictions if you think I'm way off it. If you did enjoy, drop a like and subscribe. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time.